In the last year, I've seen multiple people die. I know it's dramatic, but it's true. Going into medical school, I knew I would see sickness and death, but I didn't expect how much those experiences would teach me about life. I'm not going to pretend to know anything about life, but I just finished my final year of med school and I realized that medicine has taught me lessons that have genuinely changed the way I think about my problems, decisions, and time. I want to share them with you, and I'm hoping that by the end of this video, they might change how you think too. Lesson 1 is to take a good history, and it's completely changed how I approach my problems. When you go to the doctor and they ask you why you came in, what your problem is, and how it's changed, that's them taking a history. It's how doctors figure out what's going wrong with their patient. It's one of the most important skills in medicine, but I've also come to realize that it's an incredible skill to have for life. I have this theory that people, including myself, are far too quick to react to their problems without knowing what their problem actually is. A really good example is last year I spent months feeling lazy and feeling like I wasn't living up to my potential because I wasn't able to focus after placement. Like any other productivity bro, my initial solution was to work a bit harder and to be stricter with myself. But it wasn't sustainable and it just didn't work. At the time, I took a history about exactly why and when this was happening, and that's when I realized that I was spending more time at placement than I ever had before because I was in my final year. And that's why the solutions that had worked for me in the past weren't working then. The solution I found was that trying to study after placement was probably a lost cause, and I was better off just doing my work on the weekends and not worrying about it on the weekdays. This doesn't just apply to studying, it applies to all of the problems in your life, but also other people's problems as well. Without a good history, you can't get the right diagnosis. And without the right diagnosis, you can't find the right solution. But even then, medicine has taught me that it's human nature to look for the wrong solutions. And that's what lesson 2 is about. There's this adage taught to medical students, which is when you hear hoofbeats, think of horses, not zebras. This tells us that common things are common. If someone comes in feeling tired all the time, you think about the horses, which are common things like infection, not sleeping enough, or not getting enough nutrition, rather than zebras like really rare cancers or autoimmune conditions. I think this is such an underrated gem of a lesson because we love to overcomplicate our problems. At least I know I do. You want to think that your problem is because you don't know something and that the solution is something new that you need to learn about, rather than thinking about what might be the commonest thing causing this problem and whether the solution is something simple that you already know but you're just not doing. I had this problem where my shoulders weren't really growing at the gym, and my instinct was to try and find the most evidence-based, science-based technique that would hit all 3 heads of my shoulder in order to grow them as quickly as possible. But when I actually slowed down and thought of the horses instead of the zebras, I realized that I just wasn't hitting shoulders twice a week consistently. And that was the simple solution that helped me much more than any new exercise would have. Lesson 3 has saved me more times than I can count, and it's to beware the Dunning-Kruger effect. This is the idea that the less you know about something, the more confident you tend to be, whereas the more you know about something, the more you realize you don't know much at all. One of the hardest things about medicine is that it constantly humbles you. There are so many times that I've studied outside of placement and thought that I had learnt something useful just to go to placement and realize that it wasn't really applicable or that I didn't really know that much at all. But what has struck me is that it doesn't ever really stop. Even consultants who have been working in their field for 30 years and know magnitudes more than I do still have questions they don't know the answers to. It's not about individuals either. When you dive into evidence-based medicine, you realize that there are areas that humanity still doesn't know much about. There are huge areas of grey where research just doesn't exist, or areas where research exists but it doesn't necessarily translate to real life. I take 2 things from this. The first is to stay humble and realize that there is something you can learn from everyone. It's easy to gain a little bit of knowledge about something and to think you know a lot, but really you're at the peak of Mount Stupid on the Dunning-Kruger curve. Now, when I feel confident about things, I take it as an alarm bell, and I try to remind myself that mastery comes over years, not months or days of practice. The second thing it's made me appreciate is how precious the scientific method is. Even though we can't find the answers to everything, The scientific method really is the best way for us to be certain about anything at all. Now, the next is one of the most practical lessons that medicine has taught me, and it's about what to do when things go wrong. It's based on a question that emergency doctors and surgeons in particular like to ask their juniors, which is, in an emergency, which pulse do you check first? The answer is your own. It's a reminder to all of us that in emergency situations, the best thing that you can do is to stay calm. I saw this in action during my vascular surge term. One of the more junior doctors was doing the surgery, and all of a sudden blood started spurting everywhere, all across the room. I was obviously very scared, but the senior doctor stepped in immediately, told him to put pressure on the wound, and then told him to stop, think about how they could fix the problem. What struck me was how much more manageable that moment became just by taking a moment to stop and think. It's not every day that you face an actual emergency, but I think it's a great mindset to have even when anything goes wrong in your life. When things go wrong, like if I get a bad test result, or I drop something and it breaks, or even if I just get into an argument with someone, I like to stop, check my pulse, and think about how I should approach the situation. Now, this last lesson was one I wasn't actually going to include in this video because it's a bit sad, but I think it's one of the most important things I've learned from medicine, and it's that life is not fair. There is a positive takeaway from this, I promise, but even from my short years in medicine as a medical student, there were situations that I was exposed to that I felt were plainly unfair. I saw tiny babies who could never have possibly done anything wrong in their life have blood cancer that they need to get months and months of chemotherapy for, or a woman who went through 40 weeks of pregnancy to give birth to a stillborn child. You certainly don't need to study medicine to see that there are many, many things that are unfair about this world. But for me, seeing these situations on a relatively regular basis has made me incredibly grateful for what I have. What you know is that all of the people that are your patients are essentially no different from you. And one day your luck might run out and you could be the one sitting in that hospital bed. It's very uncomfortable to think about, but I take it as a reminder of how valuable my time is and that the things that I do are actually important. It also reminds me how scary it must be to be the patient in that hospital bed. And I think part of the role of the doctor is to help guide people through that journey. It's a privilege, and it's one of the most impactful lessons that medicine has taught me. I take it in a positive way, and it reminds me that if my luck were to run out tomorrow, I would want to have lived a life with no regrets. I hope you found some of those lessons useful, and as always, thanks for watching.